operating at that level, which a lot of people are familiar with. They haven't been able to get a lot of traction with local government where the people still rule. So we're going to have a lot on that tonight, but we're going to get started with our local friend, Roland Gonzalez, is going to tell you about local activism. Roland.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for coming and taking an interest in your local community. And I just wanted to kind of set the tone for the night. I'm by no means an authority on this issue, and really appreciate Hal and Dave coming tonight. But you know, we had the opportunity today, before we came here, with a lot of our members from MAss LPA. We had a nice barbecue, we invited some friends over, and making some new friends who were able to show up. And it just kind of brought the issue home that a place on like Cape Cod is really one of the last bastions of community that I've had an opportunity to be a part of. And you know, I'm from California. I grew up in Orange County. It's very different than Cape Cod. I've been here for 14 years now, and I love it. And one of the things I love about Cape Cod is the fact that there is a sense of community still, and you have that small town individuality. You know, it's nice that you have villages and towns that can decide for themselves to be different from, you know, their neighbor who's only 5 miles away. And that really captures the spirit of America. And, you know, nothing could be more opposed to that spirit than what we're going to be talking about tonight. You know, and it just kind of drove it home for me to see that, you know, if you care about your community, you care about having a say in your community and participating in driving the direction of your community, you know, you have that opportunity still. And this hopefully will spur you to become more active if you're not active, and really become an active part of your local community, because community is the local level. You know, it's about your neighbors, and it's about you right here in your town. It's not about somebody from on high who lives across the globe deciding what the world should be like in your town. So thanks again for coming. I hope that you get a lot out of it. We have a lot of free information back there for the taking. We ask that you take it. And there is a suggested donation of $10 tonight. If you're able to give, we would appreciate that, so we could continue our good work. You know, obviously, people here have been active in the political process. You know, it takes money to get your message out. And this is a nice thing we did last year. We had a Boston Tea Party Summit 2010 in Faneuil Hall. We attracted, I don't know what, about 550 people to this thing. We put a lot of heart and effort into this, with a big budget, and it was very successful. So this is the highlights. It was a 5-hour event. This is like an hour DVD. Gary Johnson spoke, Edward Griffin, Peter Schiff, he ran for Senate, he's an economist. They were all there, they spoke. It was a great event. So this will give you a nice flavor of what MAS LPA is about. So feel free to take one of these on your way out. And also, I'm going to pass these out, or actually on your way out, just grab one of these cards and leave your information with us, or sign the email list on the way out if you want to stay in touch with us. All right, thank you very much.
So, what is Agenda 21? Hal Shurtleff is the Regional Director of the John Birch Society. He's going to tell us more about this. We start off with something a little funny. So Hal's Puritan ancestors come from Carver, Massachusetts. And we were down around in that region. I don't know if it was the town of Carver that we stopped into, the town hall, or Marshfield, Daniel Webster's hometown. And they had, right in the town hall, they had a whole presentation for the UN of how good Agenda 21 is, right? So what we did, and everything is green, 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 green color. So what we did is we put the JBS material telling them what it's really about nice and neatly on the same table. It just really, it went with the color scheme, didn't it? But anyway, here to tell us what it's really about is my good friend Hal Shurtleff. Hal.
Before I begin, I want to make a talk a little bit about our summer camp program called Camp Constitution. It's an all-volunteer entity, starting July 9th to the 15th, and it's up in Ringe, New Hampshire, just over the Massachusetts border. And among our instructors this year will be the Patriot Pastor, one of the most dynamic men I've ever met, Pastor Stevie Kraft from Harlem. Once you'll hear him, you'll never forget him. The co-founder of the Weather Channel. He's going to be talking about global warming and that it's a fraud, that it's a multi-billion-dollar fraud. And the UN is a little bit involved in that too. I mean, a whole lot involved in that. Jennifer Coffey, State Rep from New Hampshire, Second Amendment Sisters Director, will be one of the instructors. The Honorable Norman Tregenza, another State Rep who got in by 1 vote. My vote doesn't count, but he got in by 1 vote. We're also going to be taking field trips. Tom will be our official historian. We're going to do the Battle Road, a hike up Mount Monadnock, a trip to the Uncle Sam. There was a real guy named Uncle Sam, his boyhood home, and Uncle Sam reenactor will be there to do that. The last day, full day of camp, we take the people out, adults, children, everybody, to pass out subversive things like the U.S. Constitution and other important items. Because we don't want you just people to be informed, we want the next generation of activists. That's what it's about. So we hope that it's not too late, we got room. We've got people coming from Florida and Western Michigan and Missouri this year. So we need people from the Cape. Nobody from the Cape yet, okay? And it's not that far away, so please look into it. It's a great website. We have our classes from last year on YouTube, our activities, a lot of fun things. We got a lake, a full-length basketball, and all kinds of good stuff. Very well supervised, and it's a family camp. Mother, father, baby, teenagers, what have you. And if you're an adult, you want to come? Because I think we had an offer of a nurse, a lady who's volunteer to serve us. We may have to take you up on that offer. Okay. One of my friends has a bookstore down in Pennsylvania, Al Zeller. So I think maybe a few may know Al. And the first time I went to his bookstore, I saw a UN flag on the ground, on the floor. And it said, "Please wipe feet before entering." So that's sort of my drug sentiment about the UN. Now, I say that because you've got a UN flag flying here at Route 6, don't you? Exit Route 6, right? And who put that up there? It wasn't UN occupational troops, I guarantee you. It was local Americans. But I'd like to begin. I usually like to ask sort of a rhetorical question. If the UN had occupational soldiers come into your town, would you resist them? Now, the average person would say, "You're a wacko. That's never going to happen," right? Informed Americans would say, "Never. I'll fight till the last drop of my blood. Last drop of my blood. I'll do whatever I can to resist," right? Folks, you don't need barefooted Mongolians. I used to hear rumors, in the 90s about Mongolians in northern Maine that are UN logo, and they were never there, right? It's your neighbors who are bringing the UN in. The people that sit next to you in your church, the teachers, the person you voted for selectman that you think is a great person. Those are the folks that are bringing the UN into your community. And how they're doing this? Through a thing called ICLEI, Agenda 21. A little bit of background on Agenda 21. 1992, Rio de Janeiro. There was a huge conference. 35,000.
Your stomach is the screen right now.
Oh, wow. 35,000 bureaucrats from around the world convened. One of our, the man who wrote the article that we're using, that some of you have, was there. And he said they came out with this thing called Agenda 21, about 1,100 pages. And it was hard to get a copy of it. Agenda 21 is talking about being binding on every living thing in the planet. That's the agenda. 35,000 bureaucrats around the world do not get together just to have fun. They have an agenda and they mean business. And they did pass on what they called hard law that came right out of Agenda 21. They realized that a lot of people wouldn't buy into it right away. So we have to be able to circumvent the national governments, the state governments, right into the communities. And that's what they did with this ICLEI. It stands for International Council on Local Environmental Initiative. Now, I think it's important to have a little bit of background, a quick little background on the UN. Because how many people went to school, you had UN, Model UN, you have a UN association, you have one on Cape Cod, and it's a world body where people can talk about their differences instead of fighting, right? That's what we've heard. You look at that UN Charter and look at our Constitution. Two opposite documents. The UN Charter, by the way, is an open-ended war document. Okay? There was a book that was called Death by Government, put out in the early 90s by a liberal professor. And he said that more people have been killed by government in peacetime in the 20th century than all the wars of the 20th century. Like 125 million people. Not during wartime, but during peacetime. And most of these nations belong to the UN and are members in good standing. And it happened after 1950. Okay? So there's the, we call this the house that Hiss built. Well, who's Hiss, right? Some of us know who Hiss is. That's Alger Hiss right there. A man from upper middle class, privileged background. He went to Columbia University where he became a communist and became an agent for Joseph Stalin. One of the most vilest human beings that ever walked the planet, okay? He was the man who gave us the UN Charter. He was the founding General Secretary, the acting General Secretary. He and a Soviet national wrote the UN Charter. Well, let me ask you a question. What good can come out of any document written by a Soviet agent? I don't hear too many. I don't hear anything coming out here, do I? Okay? Now, the UN, of course, does all kinds of peaceful things, don't they? They feed the hungry. Yes, they help cause the condition that brings the starvation into the country. Do you remember seeing this on national TV? Time after time after time? No. Remember Rodney King? Yeah. How many people watched Rodney King being assaulted by those policemen? How many times did you see it on TV? 100? Hundreds of times, right? And you know what? Maybe you should have been on TV hundreds of times, right? Did you see this? This was Somalia. These were UN peacekeepers. You notice the pigmentation? They're white. You see the person? A black man, young black man. He died, by the way, from this horrible crime. They did this stuff and nobody knew about it. Not many people knew about it, okay? This is just one example of the many atrocities. You hear about UNICEF for the children, right? They had a child pedophile ring in UNICEF. Remember food, what was it, oil for food? What happened with that? Kofi Annan's son. You ever see that movie, Hotel Rwanda? Well, it told a portion of the story. The bottom line is there was a Canadian general in charge of the UN mission, and he got wind of this potential massacre. He tried to warn his boss, the UN official who was in charge of the whole mission, basically said, we will do nothing to stop it. Do you know who that man was? His name was Kofi Annan. He later became head of the UN. Oh, the UN has a rogues gallery. You remember Kurt Waldheim? Remember Kurt Waldheim became president of Austria? So like a certain, oh, he was a Nazi. He took an oath to Hitler. He was evil, right? He was the head of the UN long before he was president of Austria. But most people had no idea that he was the head of the UN. If they're not they're not Nazis, then they're communist supporters or communists. I don't know the guy from South Korea, but if you're a UN General Secretary, you're buying into the whole package. Bottom line. So this was one example of some of the, and here was another one here. This was the UN convincing the peacekeeping mission. Hey, you got to do what we're told, or we're going to shoot you. So this is sort of the UN in action here. So you have to set a little. And by the way, when it comes to the environment, well, yes, we want to have trees, and we want to have farmland, and we want to have all these great things. And you know what happened in South America? Remember the rainforest being deforested? Who's behind that? The greedy, evil capitalists, right? No. Who funded it? The UN. International Monetary Fund, World Bank, all armed to the UN. This book is called Lords of Poverty, written by a liberal, I think it was an Englishman, exposing how the UN, how the money went down to South America and other parts of the world that caused these problems. And who's there to the solution? Well, the UN, of course. You remember Frederick Bastiat's book, The Law, 1850? Well, we probably weren't around when it was published, but most of us who are in the freedom movement have read this book. He said that government creates the problem and the antidote in the same laboratory. And this is an example of how the UN causes the problem, and then comes in for the solution. And the solution is always more government over our lives and loss of freedom. Always. Okay? So, let me see what else. Here. Okay, now. Bribing, we know bribing is illegal. It's immoral. It's wrong. What makes it worse is these folks bribe you with your own money. Now, getting back to Agenda 21 and ICLEI. ICLEI was, again, it started 2 years before the Rio conference, but it was a process. And so they were set up to infiltrate, I think it's the right word, local communities. And how do they do this? Well, they go up to a selectman in Dedham and say, hey, we're going to give you a check for $179,800 if you allow ICLEI or Sustainable Development to come to your town. Now, I don't know if that's direct payments for ICLEI, but Dedham is one town that belongs to it. And this was on display. I mean, they're not even hiding it. You know, I didn't have to go for the files and sneak in the middle of the night when no one was. It's right there in town hall. And I bet you, if you go to your town hall, you'll find things like this too. Okay? We were in Marshfield, and here it is right there. All these, we put these pictures. So this came out of the state of Massachusetts. And the town of Dedham happens to be a member of ICLEI. And so what happens is that the ICLEI is a government entity. It's not what they call an NGO. You know, NGO means non-government organization. They have their spin-off groups. And I live in the section of Boston called West Roxbury. And they have something called West Roxbury Saves. So I wonder if they're affiliated with ICLEI. So I got the head of the group, and I sent him an email. I just said, do you belong to ICLEI? Nothing else. No email attachments, nothing about the UN, no UN flag with a red line, nothing. He got back to me and said, no, we're independent. Well, what did that tell me? That he knows all about ICLEI, because usually the first thing they say is, what's that? My city councilor, a guy I was friendly with, he's in Hyde Park, he's being groomed to be mayor. I asked him about it, never heard of it. Then I looked into it. Oh yeah, we joined in 1980, see. The ICLEI has all of the model legislation that will be introduced at the local level, ordinance and so forth, the various zoning, and Dave's going to go into that more detail. You know, at Carver, someone was telling me that you can't idle your car more than 5 minutes. That came out of ICLEI. Now, anybody have a constitution handy?
Yeah.
Article 1, Section 10. What's that say? Well, I'll go over a portion of it. It said that states cannot confederate. That doesn't mean they can't have reenactment, Civil War reenactment, by the way. It means that they can't join other political entities outside of that country, right? The ICLEI is a government-to-government organization in clear violation of Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. That's how I read it. I don't know how you read it. That's how I read it. The town of Carver, the town of Marshfield, all exist under they're incorporated under Massachusetts law. So Carver can't sign a treaty with Russia, can they? But they signed a treaty with ICLEI. And you know what makes it worse? They're taking your money to join this. And then they're passing laws that are making it be hard for you, or ordinances, which are worse than laws. Because sometimes you get repeal laws, but what's an ordinance? How do you repeal that, right? When it comes to greening your home, you want to sell your house? Oh, but you have to meet these new green codes before you can sell it. Or you got to sell it for a much reduced price. Or no idling, or you own a cranberry bog? You think the UN cares about your cranberry bog, or your farm, or your herd of cows? You see what they did in South America, how much they care about the rainforest, you see? And by the way, in that reprint from the New American Magazine, by the way, I do recommend you get a subscription to that. It's an indispensable tool in the freedom. Oh, here's Marshfield Town Hall here. Be a greenscaper. And it doesn't say anything about the UN, does it? But it's all coming from the UN. I mean, if we had hammer and sickles and it said, we're here to take over, there'd be opposition. I mean, I hope so. But no, it's nice and, well, who doesn't want green? I plant trees, and I hate litter. I want to see a clean environment. I have children. I want to see them grow up in a, but I think that people that lived here for the generations know more about it than these bureaucrats at the UN. Maybe a little bit, maybe a whole lot more. I think the person that has the farm knows more about what he needs or she needs than somebody at the UN headquarters. But that's just me. Now, the ICLEI has, in Massachusetts alone, about 38 member towns. Carver happens to be one. Barnstable, so we're in Barnstable, right? Cotuit is Barnstable, right? Nantucket, Kingston, Marshfield. I think there's another town. I think it might be Sandwich, I'm not certain. But I have a list of the whole country. Some of them are counties, some of them are towns or cities. Boston, it looks like when I read the list, it looks like, you know, when they cancel school because of snow. Boston, Belmont, Cambridge, Carlisle, Acton, it goes down the list. Dedham happens to be a member. Of course, you expect Cambridge and Boston almost automatically. Amesbury, Newburyport, Newton, out by Dave's area, I think, Amherst, Worcester, and a number of other ones. So I can give you, huh?
Northampton.
Northampton.
Amherst, I can't believe it.
Barnstable is a member, yeah. Yeah. What I can do, this is a call to action. I think I want you to get that. Who has an article? Here we go. I want to make sure you take one. These cost me $3 for $1, so you take one free, and it means 50 cents a piece for additional ones. I can send you a link. I have a page on Scribd. Have you ever heard of Scribd.com? It's like a YouTube for documents. I have a collection of UN things, and I have this up there. So if you want to just Scribd.com/HShurtleff, or I'll just give you an email address. And I'm posting things all the time. I got, I don't know, 500 or 600 reads in the last couple of weeks on this, so it's great. And what I'd like you folks to do, one of the things, call to action sort of thing, is to get this to other people. Start your own script page, download the stuff, upload it, so you know who's reading your material. Okay? So, so again, what do we do about it? And let me tell you some success stories already, because it's a lot of hope here. The town of Edmond, Oklahoma, about a month ago, kicked out ICLEI. It didn't happen because someone just woke up and said, let's get it out, because it was an organization that got it out. Some organized people got it out. Several counties in Pennsylvania, the last couple of weeks, kicked it out. The governor of Florida is coming out strong against ICLEI. In Maine, back in November and earlier this year, we heard about these meetings that were being organized by these it wasn't ICLEI directly, they called it Gateway 21. And all kinds of planning and land usage, especially on the oceans and the rivers and so forth, coastal Maine. They had meetings. They call this the Delphi technique. You know, we have a meeting like this, and let's say this guy in the back, he's really one of my guys. He comes in there with objections, and then he decides, oh, well, we won't go this far, but we go that far. And everybody walks away thinking we've won, you know, when actually you have set the tone for what we want. We had our members show up at these meetings, so we know what we're up to. Well, they have a pretty decent governor in Maine. But just being a decent governor doesn't mean anything's going to happen. But about a month ago, there was about 15 to 20 members of the John Birch Society and about 15 other, you know, pro-freedom groups like the Maine Patriots and the Constitutionals of Maine. They met with the governor. That's 30 people. It's pretty imposing. And all these people backed this governor financially and voted for him. And anyway, they talked about, they laid the information on the table, and guess what happened the next day? Gateway was kicked out of the state. Gone. Completely. This is when you're supposed to clap. Yeah. What we want to do is we have to make it controversial. People don't even know it exists. That's the problem. They don't know there's even ICLEI. So, by the way, I was on Facebook, and there is a Facebook. How many people on Facebook? How many people actually use it regularly? Okay, so a lot of hands went down. Okay. Believe me, they're not going to win this battle on Facebook or on cyberspace, but it's a good way to get the message out. Let me tell you what happened to me. 38 towns is a lot of towns to deal with. This is my full-time, so I do have a little bit more time than other folks. This is what I do this is my full-time thing. But, so I've been going to Facebook pages on Carver, for example, GOP, and most new towns have a daily newspaper, or at least a newspaper that goes into those towns, so they have Facebook pages. And you post, I posted this information, I posted a membership of ICLEI, I posted videos up there, and a lady in...
Lisa Martin.
Huh?
Lisa Martin.
Yeah, Lisa Martin, Carver GOP. Lisa Martin got a hold of me, and she said she didn't know anything about this, but she read it, and she says, oh my heavens. And she's become a one-woman expert in the last 2 weeks, and I think, how many people here as a result of Lisa Martin's, see? So one little Facebook posting led to this.
I was going to meet her tonight. I was going to meet her.
Right? And it's going to snowball, right? And we are going to get ICLEI booted out of Cape and the rest of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
It's going to go down. So, a call to action. Get how many, find out how many selectmen you have. Most people, what, 5 or 7, Dave? Some are 3. Town manager, what happened to town manager? We went to Marshfield. I was doing a little family research with my, probably distantly related, this guy, he's an old Yankee like me. And we went to Marshfield Town Hall, and I dropped 3 off to the selectmen, the office there, went to the town manager, and walked in. His name is Bruno Longo. No, Rocco Longo. It's not got a tough name. I don't want to deal with somebody named Rocco, you know. Cement goulashes in the bottom of the river, you know. So, anyway, I walked in and I said, I have some information about Agenda 21 and ICLEI. What makes you think I want this? I'm not interested in this whatsoever, something to that effect. Well, Marshfield happens to be, I know what we are. I'm not interested. I said, oh, okay, well, don't be rude about it. I'm not being rude. Oh, okay. So I do a little research. Oh, Rocco, I see. Internationalist. He's the man that probably got it into Marshfield. So I called up some of our Birch Society members in Marshfield, some of our friends. Now we have an issue. Now we have letters to the newspaper. Marshfield Mariner has this posted, Marshfield GOP, and whatever else you have in Marshfield. They know about it. Okay, the next step is to bring pressure, maybe even have a meeting like this in Marshfield, and a meeting like this in Carver, and a meeting like this all over the state. Because we have to bring attention to it. And one little, so letter writing, and I'll be happy, depending on my availability, to come give a little talk about this. There's a lot of people, we're talking about having maybe a symposium, maybe bringing in some of the people will be on this videotape that you see a little bit later, Dr. Michael Kaufman and Tom DeWeese. Tom DeWeese has been working on this for years, and he's real solid, and some other folks, and just get a lot of people out because information is where it begins. Now, talking about information, in Dedham, they're going to have Flag Day. You would think Flag Day, U.S. flag parade, not this flag. The U.S. flag. A lot of patriots, not too many Flag Days anymore, you know, Flag Day parades. So it's going to be an event that, what's the group that sponsored it? Campaign for Liberty.
Campaign for Liberty.
So they asked, they invited me, well, Tom got me invited. Anyway, Tom's great. By the way, Tom was the man that probably got John McManus to speak at the rally for the Republic in Minnesota in front of 10,000 people. So Tom's good like that. Anyway, we hope to get a nice, like a one-page flyer or pamphlet. We got about a week to do it, not a little more than a week. Well, I was on Facebook yesterday, and by the way, there is a Facebook page. It's called Stop Agenda 21, Stop ICLEI, and it's a very active page. That's where I get most of my information, you know, what's happening. So I suggest to joining that and posting your own things on there. But there is a group called Democrats, if I can find it here. Is that it? No, that's not it. Democrats Against the ICLEI. And, oh, there it is. And I'm thinking maybe they have 3 members and they need to pay for it, I don't know. But this was a PDF, which is a pamphlet. Okay, you just found out your town or county is a member of ICLEI. What do you do about it? What does this mean? So this is a 2-pager that can be used, and they have links to their website and another website. But you could create your own, you know, what the Plymouth Tea Party, Plymouth County Tea Party, Mass LPA, JBS. You can form an ad hoc, you know, Lower Cape committee against this, or Lower Cape committee for free, whatever. You know, of course you have a Mass LPA, I would suggest that. And get these things out. And we have a printer that does a good job, right, Bob? That we can flood the town with these things. Just make sure they're recycled. So. Okay, with that, I want to thank you, and again, a call to action. We need to get the word out, and we have allies everywhere, because most of our allies don't know that there's a problem here. And I do recommend, I have some books on the UN. They get a general outline, some of the things I said here, several different titles, and I have plenty of this reprint. And we'll be doing more with this, so that's why we need your email address so we can keep in touch, and give me your success stories, and we'll tell you our success stories or what have you. So thank you.
All right, so yeah, we've got 3 DVDs back there. This entire 3 DVD set can be yours for nothing, for just showing up tonight, which is really great. The last time we showed up at the other hall in there, it's a little bit more expensive to rent. We also had free DVDs, we had free food and everything, and we were just asking out of the kindness of our heart for maybe a $10 donation. Hardly anybody gave us anything, so it's hard for us to give these things, you know, we have to dig into our own pockets in order to put this all together. So if you can just give us a small donation tonight, that would be wonderful. Give Hal a little bit. And by the way, if you need any of us to come to your town and give this type of seminar for free, we do that, absolutely. And what we said about Flag Day is, you know, you learn tactics. And I think actually what we're going to show a bit of a documentary about that tonight. If you're going to have an event like this, it helps to have it like an hour after a Flag Day parade, which is what we're going to do. So we're going to show up at Flag Day at Dedham, tell them a little bit about what the town of Dedham is doing, sort of behind their backs, get a little press out there, and maybe get some people to come to a presentation like this. So Hal talked mainly about the macro, and my good friend Dave Kopacz, Vice President of MAss LPA and newly elected President of MARA, is going to speak on how all of this is applied at the local level, and also going to screen Beverly Eckman's Exposing Group Manipulation Tactics. Wow. All right, Mr. Kopacz, take it away.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for coming out today. It's such a beautiful weekend. I'm sure there's lots of things that we all could have been doing at the beach and other places, but it is so great to see this many faces out here today. Real quick, I want to give you a quick summary of who I am, what I'm about. I'm a country boy from Belchertown. I was born and raised there. I live in the town right next door, where I currently serve on 3 boards in my town. I chair 2 of them, one being Conservation Commission and the second being Open Space. And as you learn more about this Agenda 21, you'll see that it's boards like that that are the targets of ICLEI. Hal did a great job of describing what that group is and why it developed. Myself, I've been aware of the Earth Summit 2 that took place, a big Earth Summit and environmental summit that was supposed to lay out the groundwork of how we were going to function as communities going into the future. The climate controversy came out of this, or at least picked up speed. Sustainable development and smart growth were also products of that particular summit. Tom mentioned on this, on this video, I'm fortunate to have a weekly radio show, and I've interviewed already 3 of the 5 speakers on this DVD. One of them being Michael Shaw, who was from California, who was in the early stages of sustainable development when it hit the Santa Cruz area of California. So they're about 15, 20 years ahead of us from what we're seeing here right now. To us, that's a good thing. We can look over to Santa Cruz and see what has happened to these communities, and rest assured that that's what we're going to see here. Michael Kaufman from Maine, he hosted this original summit. A woman by the name of Mrs. Davis was running into problems with her property and land use, and these 5 people got together, and it was Mr. Kaufman who 1 hour before the biodiversity treaty was going to go up for ratification, he showed up with a smoking gun, which was documents that proved that the UN had lied to the committee in this map. Has anyone seen this map before?
Yep.
All right, this is part of the Wildlands project, where they want to rewild 50% of the developed area of North America. Not just 50% overall, but 50% of the developed area. We've only developed maybe 3% of the land mass here, so pretty small number. But everything that you see here in red, I know it's very difficult to see from a distance, but I think you can see it overall kind of pinkish and reddish in color. Those red colors indicate places that human activity is going to be forbidden if this agenda goes through. Obviously, we're never going to be able to, even the Congress that we have now, I don't think is bold enough to ratify a treaty that is this overwhelming. The UN realizes that. They've incorporated things like ICLEI to deal with this in a roundabout way. They're no longer coming at us head on. They're going right around Congress, and they're working, the UN working in our communities. They're using environmental activist groups, and what I've seen in great abundance through my position at the Conservation Commission is they're using land trusts. Now, these can be both good and bad. I've seen some very good family land trusts which do what they are supposed to do, and they observe private property rights. But because of the way grant money is divvied out, you know, we've got the federal government that's bought into global warming and bought into sustainable development and smart growth, and we now have land trusts that are positioning themselves for that grant money. I'll use one local example of where sustainable development is showing up, and unless you really look a little closer, you probably wouldn't recognize it. But some of you folks may be dealing with dam removals. In Bonneville, Massachusetts, we have a dam that maybe 40 or 50 years ago supplied power to an entire industrial complex. Hundreds of people went there for jobs. There was a fire, the complex went down, sat there stagnant for a while. The town tried to bring in new industry and it didn't happen. Now we got Section 8 housing there. We now have the government telling us that it's just not feasible to generate power. They want to take this dam down. And common sense tells me if they could develop enough power to run an entire industrial complex, why couldn't they do the same thing and take that Section 8 right off the grid? They can. The technology has only gotten better, and the regulations and laws have only gotten worse. So what's happening, and I'm seeing this blossoming before my eyes, is that these environmental groups and land trusts are coming out of nowhere. They're shoveling money out the door with this dam in Bondsville. You can't find a thin red dime to repair it. Originally, the cost to repair this structure was like $300,000, and the total cost of removing it and dealing with all the toxic sediments and all that, let alone what it's doing to people's land and the values of their land, was up over $1 million. As it become more controversial, the prices have now come back down, or it's about comparable either way. Still, there's not a thin red dime to fix that dam. There's going to be a private solution, or the dam will be removed. And when you look at the science from an environmental perspective, we've always been taught in conservation that diversity is a good thing. Complete impact to the diversity of that entire hydraulic system through there by removing the dam. The more I looked at the science was skewed. It was junk science that they were giving us in what I can only call propaganda. Now, that dam is probably going to get taken down unless we find a private solution to it, but it is wrapped up very nicely in Agenda 21, because if you look at the Global Biodiversity Assessment Report, it calls things like agriculture, pastures, fish ponds, oh yes, and the hooves of animals like horses and cattle, compact the soil, harvesting of timber, dams, reservoirs, private property rights, page 767, 782. The Global Biodiversity Assessment Report is called all these things unsustainable. Private property rights, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Hal, is one of the planks of the Communist Manifesto. Sustainable development.
Dave, what was the name of that document again? The Global Biodiversity?
Global Biodiversity Assessment Report. This is the working document which they use to frame what sustainable development is going to be. Could be called something different in your area, and where I come from, there's a couple of processes we need to get this through: visioning and consensus building, and they actually worked one of those words into the title, called Valley Vision 2, where I come from. Now this is all the regional planners' brilliance and how they're going to manage us like cattle and within these 43 towns that my district belongs in. Now, I knew that there was some kind of a connection. I didn't think it was quite as involved as it was, and about a year ago I started paying attention to the junk that I was getting in the email into my office from the planners, and up comes a conference. Well, I decided to attend. There was 4 of them within the 43 towns of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission's jurisdiction. All 4 of those towns were green communities. one was a member of ICLEI, and when I showed up, I was one of 5 people. So there's 5 people that developed a consensus at this visioning session that was going to shape what sustainable development is going to look like for 43 towns. And other than myself, there were 2 people from Amherst and 2 from Northampton. Now they fly the UN flag in Amherst too, and Northampton's known for other things. So that's what's shaping it in our district. And this consensus thing, we're going to talk more about that. I'm only going to speak on it for a limited amount of time, but I hope you stick around to watch the short documentary by Beverly Heckman, who has really done an awesome job at describing how we're falling victim for this stuff. And it's through visioning. They'll sit down, they'll have a meeting, they'll invite all of the people in town to come in, and they'll even cherry pick some of the upstanding people in here. It might be a selectman, or someone from the Board of Health, or a planner. They'll get these high-profile people in because they're going to need press releases and sound bites afterwards. Well, they get them in and they visionize what is the perfect, what would your community be like if you could have anything you want? Well, you know, they set the tone by using words like sustainability, so people are in that mindset to begin with. But what's happening is these are hypotheticals. They're fictional. It's visioning. Nothing that comes out of that is real. So they're going to come out with a whole list of make-believe things that's going to give them a utopian community. Part 2, the consensus building. They're going to work in your town. All right, they don't just go out and send out random invitations, and they don't invite everybody in. You're going to cherry pick, and they're going to get the right people to come in to generate a consensus, getting closer to a workable plan here now. When your community comes out with a consensus that this might be a good plan going forward, you start seeing it showing up in your regional planning documents. Now, I don't mind having a vibrant debate with the planners and administrators and people in government. I really don't. I'm pretty calloused and can take pretty much any insults they can put at me. What I don't like is being lied to. A few years ago, the regional planners, the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions, and a few of these other organizations, some of them NGOs, some of them actually part of government, were pushing the commissions to buy GIS software. And, you know, it had my attention. They were offering it at a discounted price, and I looked and I go, holy mackerel, this software is thousands of dollars, and they're ready to give it to my commission, my little group of 7 people that I work with, for $400. It was quite a deal, and quite often some things are too good to be true, and this was one of them. We bought it. We learned to use it, but we didn't submit any information because I was skeptical. One of the conditions was that we send all the information and our data overlays up to the regional planners. When I went to this meeting, it took me 3 requests to finally get these maps. They kept wanting to send me maps of just my town. I said, no, I want the regional maps. I want to see your plan. Here we go, right there. Like soldiers in a battlefield, calling in the coordinates for airstrikes. Showed up in their Valley Vision 3, their draft. I showed you the cover of Valley Vision 2 while they're working on a 3rd. And everything that we sent them, we being all the conservation commissions within the area, showed up here as targets. And I mean that in a literal sense. In my town of Ware, we have an industrial mill yard. Very vibrant place. Right now we're trying to bring business back in. We've got economic groups that are, how can we make this more appealing and to bring business into town, jobs for people? Well, sustainable development doesn't want that. The Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, your regional planners do not want that either because they're tied right in with sustainable development as defined by the United Nations. It works right in and use a lot of different groups to do it. So all these little splotches here, I mean, I could go into great detail describing what they are, but in every one that you see, you're looking at the co-option of private property rights. They're zoning for scenic, for views, for aesthetics. Ham radio antennas shows up in the new one. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. They're talking about statewide zoning reform, CLRPA, Comprehensive Land Use Reform and Partnerships Act. And it is as ominous as it sounds. So this here, when I go to look at this map, I could not believe what I was seeing. Commissions all this time thought they were doing something good for the environment, good for their communities. We're calling in targeted strikes. My mill yard right now, where we should be trying to bring business in and jobs for our community, has been targeted for one of these, what do they call them? In the big map that I showed you here, the little dark spots here and there, they call them human settlement zones. In your community, they have a scaled down version of that. But our mills are now going to have maybe some cute little stores on the bottom. Stack them and pack them Section 8, because that's where your low income is going. If you look at the proposed CLRPA that we'll be talking about shortly, that's where your Section 8 is going to go. And on the top will be some businesses. Some people say that may not be a bad idea, but what you've done is you've absolutely killed the possibility of bringing business into your town. At least in my town, it was all concentrated in these mill yards. The mill yards are set up to accommodate such things. You're not going to see that. The new land use reform bill, they want to put the low-income houses there. There's a mandate that you shall, for hazardous waste material, the community shall grant these permits in industrial zones. So they're taking people, they're herding them into these compact little residential situations while stifling economic development in the area, and they're going to be living within their own waste. This is not a permit that can be denied at the local level or at the state level. They shall. Aesthetics, I mentioned that. Where is it that the government has the right to say that, you know, your neighbor takes precedent in their view over your property rights? Antennas, they use, and they often hide things in exemptions. I hate the way they do this, and it gets right by people. They list in the new proposed CLRPA bill that licensed ham radio operators are exempt. Sounds intuitive and nice enough, but you read a little farther and it says, well, they're exempt, but they can only apply things of, you know, so they can't be any higher than a reasonable height. So some bureaucrat's going to decide how high a ham radio antenna can go to be functional. But what it doesn't do is what about unlicensed radio operators, which I am. As long as I don't mic up and talk to anyone, I don't need a license. I love turning on the radio and listening to things around the world. It forces me to develop a contract with the government to become licensed for something that I don't need a license for. But more scarier yet is that they are regulating for view. That holds true with solar access. If you want a second floor on your house, you might be depriving your neighbor of solar access because the shadow of your second floor goes in their yard. Sustainable development is all wrapped up in this new CLRPA, Comprehensive Land Use Reform and Partnerships Act. The partnerships part of this, I submit to you, is developed out of fascism. We've heard a lot about public-private partnerships, these land trusts. Just in Massachusetts alone, 47 pages. Not 47 land trusts, there are 47 pages of land trusts.